Hello everyone, welcome. Today's project, let's dive into repression, suppression, two fundamental axioms Freud observed as a psychoanalyst, and he was dead on about how the unconscious mind stores emotions and traumas, feelings, guilt, shame. How do we unravel the thread of our past? And why is this important to actually move beyond the past and forward towards our higher selves, whatever that is? And so the first thing I want to say is suppression. This is consciously ignoring the feelings, ignorance, willful blindness. An example of this is your boss says something to you at work, tells you to do something that you know, I don't want to do that. That doesn't feel right. But you do it anyways to please him. You push those feelings aside. You come home and you have a fight with your partner about the state of the apartment. And you go on for an hour, 2 hours about how they're doing things wrong and little micro awarenesses that you've noticed across the year that you've caught them doing, and it's just coming out in this vomit like format. But underneath the surface, after a couple of hours of bickering, the feelings and the emotions of what happened at work with your boss finally come to the surface, and the other partner goes, oh, I finally get why we're having this argument, because the argument originally just seemed so random. And that's suppression, right? You ignored this, but then it comes up soon after, maybe a week later or 2 weeks later, or even later on in the day. But another great example of this is you're at a party and your partner annoys you. They do something, and instead of causing a scene in front of other people, you push it aside for later, and then you confront them later on. You put on your social mask, your persona, and you carry on with the party like everything is okay. Now, everything is not okay. There's this thing that has happened to you, these emotions, these feelings that need to come up. And if you ignore them, this is a problem for you because you're ignoring truth. And what happens when you ignore truth? You betray a little bit of a part of yourself. And because you're not addressing this, you feel a little guilt and shame for not acknowledging the fact that this needs to be dealt with. There's a problem here, and I need to address this and shine a light on it, and by shining a light, formulating some sort of solution. And then let's move on to repression. Repression is you have so much guilt, fear, and shame over the feeling that you are not even conscious of it. It's been put in this black box deep inside the drawers of your unconscious mind, and it's locked away. And so an example of this is you come into contact with a musky cigarette smell that reminds you, it brings up emotions from your childhood where you were around this kind of smell when you were being abused or neglected as a child, and the emotions come up, but the memory is it's still locked deep within that black box inside of your unconscious mind, that you're feeling the emotions. It's affecting you in a really profound way, but you can't put your finger on it, and you refuse, and it's been refused for most of your life to acknowledge the fact that this has happened to you, because it requires so much self-exploration and encountering the fear. This fear is so massive that it's going to take you out in some sort of way. So we will get into how we can work through these fears, work through these past memories in order to move beyond them. But a great example of this, and also a great way to tell that something is repressed, is through projection and denial. Now, a good example of this is you have an abandoned mother. When you were young, she left, and now, currently in your life, you are desperately, with so much neediness, grabbing onto your partners, these women, and you have this strong fear of them leaving you, and so this desperation of always trying to please them, neglecting yourself in order to keep them around, will actually force them away from you. So it's this self-fulfilling prophecy that happens. Fear creates fear. So if I have a fear of losing control, like I did when I used to suffer from health anxiety, I had this massive fear of I can't lose control. So what does one do? Well, I shrunk my world down so small so that I won't be in any situation where I will lose control. And so now I'm at a point in my life where I'm around family for reassurance. I'm around keeping my doctor close by, keeping all of the things that numb, soothe, and distract me at arm's length. I am staying at home, avoiding work, avoiding all these responsibilities. But fear creates fear. The fear of losing control, what happens? It creeps in some way. It's like the Garden of Eden story. The snake always creeps into, no matter how big the walls get, the snake always finds its way inside. And so for me, even when I was at home going to bed, it was this feeling of not being in control. Like my thoughts would be going, I can't seem to control my bodily movements. This is depersonalization, not feeling in control, feeling automated of oneself. And so the fear becomes more of a reality the more I try to ignore the fact that it's there. So for someone with an abandoned parent, ignoring the fact that first of all, you don't want to acknowledge the pain and the loss associated to that. It's brutal. But that by not acknowledging that, you're creating this snowball effect out into your external world. You're projecting the fact that you don't want this to happen again. So you're doing everything, you're overly compassionate to those around you, and you're doing everything you can, being so overly agreeable to the point where you're neglecting your own mental and physical health to just hold on to these relationships. And we see this all the time with people who can't seem to find a partner for them. They're always winding up in negative, toxic relationships. And it's very much wise to look towards yourself and say, well, I'm the one attracting this. It's not the world that's dealing me a bad hand. It's the fact that there's something going on within me that's making me attract this certain type of people. Now, how do we work on all of this repression and suppression? Well, the first thing on the list is to acknowledge the fact that there's something wrong. There's a problem here. This is absolutely critical for self-development. There's a problem here. I have a problem. I need to address this problem. This is the beginning steps of all psychotherapeutic process. Before, you can't be forced into therapy. You have to acknowledge the fact that there's so much that you haven't dealt with, or there's so much that you don't know, that you need someone to help you formulate and pick apart the threads of the issues of your existence. And it's a process. You need a structure. You need the tools and strategies. And this is why I created this channel, is so that we can all learn together the strategies and tools to live a better, meaningful, and peaceful life, really. The next thing that you need to do is write it out. Write this stuff out. And what do you write out? What are the questions that you need to ask yourself? One is how can this situation strengthen me? You have a specific trauma, you have a specific moment in your life that has caused you some emotional distress. Write out, how can this situation strengthen me? What did I learn from this situation? What are the lessons here? What has this taught me? And then a big question to ask yourself is, how can this not happen to me ever again? How can I not wind up in this situation? And this is really important, because people who are naive and wind up being betrayed, they have to go, well, how did I wind up in that situation? Maybe I was too naive. Maybe I ignored these warning signs along the way. And then you have to go, okay, well, what was leading up to that betrayal? Were I doing things wrong? And so it's like, as soon as the betrayal happened, it's like, I no longer thought I was that person. I don't know what I think of myself at this moment, and I don't know what my future holds. And so how do you even contend with this complete descent into chaos? And the question is, well, you have to go across the timeline of the years leading up to what happened and say, okay, are there things that I could have prevented, I could have done differently? Are there signs that the other person led on to me that I was unconscious or I ignored or I didn't want to acknowledge? And so that's huge. That's a process. But you don't want to go all the way to the deep end and say, well, I'm just a bad person, I screwed it up, and that'll just lead you down a very deep, dark road that I highly recommend you don't walk down. So it's important to go down to the next level of analysis and say, well, what kind of person were they who would do something like that? You have to look at their life. And you also, when I took responsibility for my toxic relationship I had in the past, this actually brought about so much clarity and alleviated so much of my guilt, shame, and resentment towards her. It was acknowledging the fact that I made a lot of mistakes, and no wonder she got to the point where she was doing what she did. But with the things that she was saying, the behaviors that she was doing, it was a contribution to the overall toxic relationship. And so that's just an example of how you can work through these issues, is by asking yourself those three questions. How can this strengthen me? Did I learn anything about the other person, about myself, about the experience? And how can this not happen to me again? Writing it out in detail is really important. And also talking about this to someone. A lot of people who come to me for coaching, they find it a great relief to them to actually flesh out all of the things that they've been worried about and contending with. And that's no joke. There's so much going up there in the unconscious mind, and the chaos needs to be fleshed out. And then the next thing is feeling the emotions through awareness. So meditation is really important for me, because I'll leave a link to a meditation below. This is something that you need to do. So to feel the emotion of the problem, you have to acknowledge it and feel the tension, feel the emotion, feel the anger, the frustration, feel that well up within you. And then on the other side of this discomfort is peace. But you can't, like David Goggins says, you can't find peace without going to war with yourself. You have to go into the mind. You have to shine awareness on your insecurities, your vulnerabilities. You have to shine a light on your past traumas, the abuse, the neglect, whatever it is, to unfold the new pages of your future and to find that peace right now. And that's where I'm going to leave you today on this video. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Leave a comment below. Please subscribe. Please share this with somebody that you know could benefit from this and rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell so that whenever a new video of mine appears, you will be one of the first to know. Namaste.